just a hypothesis, but it seems to me that she's angry because of something we've acquired recently.
Acquired? What do you mean, acquired what?
Well, it's individuality.
Ghost in the Shell is a science fiction franchise based on the seinen manga series of the same name written and illustrated by Masamune Shirow. The manga first serialized in 1989 under the subtitle of The Ghost in the Shell, and it told the story of a fictional counter-cyber terrorist organization known as Section 9 that was led by protagonist Major Motoko Kusanagi in mid-21st century of Japan. The series would go on to cover important theoretical problems ranging from uploaded consciousness to fully prosthetic bodies and the threat of merging into a singularity. However, beyond the topics of science fiction, what made the show so memorable was not the flashy animation for the time, or the cool futuristic setting. Rather, instead of focusing on what humans will become, the series focused mostly on what it was that made us human in the first place. The character mentioned before is a woman who was given gradual operations after a childhood injury that resulted in a 100% prosthetic body. The series does a good job on attempting to address the argument of mind-body dualism through blurring the line between what is considered human and machine. One of my favorite cases of this is episode 15 of the series called Machines Desirantes. Up until this episode, the robot battle units known as tachikomas have been noticeably gaining intelligence throughout the show. They go from basic drones with an AI interface to blatantly intelligent objects.
You're right. I only tell lies. I never ever say anything that's true. A curious dilemma. Because if what it said is true, that means it wasn't lying. And if what it said is false, that would mean that it does tell the truth. How do you resolve this perplexing contradiction? This one's a toughie. Come on, girl. Don't you know? Figure it out.
Well,
Folks who can't handle a self-reference paradox are real suckers. And what was with that stereotypical thinking pose? Who can't?
At first glance, it feels as though the sole purpose of the tachikomas is for comedic relief. They have a non-threatening voice, and outside of witnessing death every day, they keep a lighthearted demeanor throughout the series. However, it's important to break this down and look into what it truly means. These are ultimately robots created to assist in battle. Their primary utility function defines them and how humans interact with them. They're designed not to look like humans like the android they fooled, but rather to look like a mechanical abomination. This brings up an interesting concept related to Mill's utilitarianism.
On the contrary, the crux of the problem is that we're too close to being human. It's because the line that separates human from robot has already been reduced to minor differences in the physical body. Stop for a moment and ask yourselves why our own bodies without organs aren't created in the human image.
Efficiency as weapons, perhaps?
That's part of it, but the main reason is this. If we were humanoid, our users would over-empathize with us on a strange level. As a result, we'd probably be hated on an even broader scale.
Well, what about her then?
She's benign. Her processing capabilities are limited, so humans don't perceive her as a threat. She has to deal with humans on a daily basis, and in order to be efficient in the human environment, a humanoid form is logically the most versatile. Every artificial object or device in the world was designed for mankind's use.
Oh, I see.
These objects were specifically designed to benefit the masses. They were specially crafted to be able to protect, and modeled in a way that prevents emotional attachment from humans. Today, when asking anyone about what a robot looks like, they will imagine the androids we've designed to look and act as close to human as possible. But few would imagine the robots we've been using for years industrially. We create machines to fulfill a purpose that benefits mankind as a whole. The end goals of automation are to obtain happiness for the masses, thus appealing to the utilitarian sense of ethics. If a machine doesn't continue to benefit the general population, the ethical thing to do would be discontinuing the machine and replacing it with a better one. However, what happens when the line between machine and moral agent is also blurred?
I haven't seen him. help me look for him? Well, you see, I was kind of hoping to go into town. I'm on my way through the town. It's a place called Ocean View Hills Park. He's probably somewhere around there. Oh, okay, we can go together, but only as far as the town. You mean it? Thank you.
Where's your house? Do you know where you live?
Hey there, officers. I'm her guardian. For your information, I was critically wounded during the war. My brain, the only part of me left intact, was put inside this tank as a temporary measure. But as things turned out, my mind fused with it, and I've been this way ever since. And let me tell you two, calling a patriot and veteran of battle who lost his body in the service of his country a pet is downright rude. You kids today are just plain babied and spoiled and don't even know what war is.
Wowie, was that ventriloquism? Something like that. Hey, let's try looking for that Ocean View Hills Park you mentioned. Huh? You mean you'll go with me? Sure.
It is crucial for us to now attempt to define what a moral agent even is before we can dive deeper into this dilemma. A moral agent is defined by most as a person who has the ability to discern right from wrong and to be held accountable for his or her own actions. Moral agents have a moral responsibility not to cause unjustified harm. However, this definition asserts the presupposition that only humans have the capacity for moral agency. It effectively neglects all other types of life from being held accountable for their actions.
That's Lucky! Well, is this animal your pet? Lucky's not scrawny like that dog. That's not him. Huh. Hey, Tachkoma! That was mean! Mean? But it wasn't Lucky. That dog is of no use to you. So what if it wasn't him? You didn't have to be mean to him. Understand? I wasn't mean. He was simply unnecessary. If you ever do that again, you'll make me really mad.
Immanuel Kant would argue that humans cannot make moral decisions without first obtaining knowledge of the world around them. As stated in his doctrine of transcendental idealism, it was his theory that almost all knowledge, aside from our intrinsic understanding of motion and time, were learned through experience. According to Kant, all our knowledge begins with the senses, proceeds then to the understanding, and ends with reason. And there is nothing higher than reason. So perhaps Kant would assert that the thing obligating us to uphold an ethical lifestyle is the very ability to extrapolate reason out of the sensory data we receive through day-to-day life. This is where the traditional concept of a moral agent starts to become foggy in respect to the Ghost in the Shell canon.
That reminds me, did you know that the word cyborg is now an issue? They say it's a discriminatory term for people who've been cyberized. Oh, that's just reactionary conservatism from naturalists. Condemning cyberization and prosthetics in this day and age, what are they thinking? I bet they feel that artificially enhancing the human body with mechanisms crosses the line between man and machine. Well, I guess I can understand that. I can't stand that kind of warped Luddite mentality. And don't get me going on non-profit groups. Uh-huh.
As previously mentioned, most characters in this series have a heavy amount of prosthetics, with the main character being the most relevant. Without a doubt, Motoko Kusanagi is considered to be a moral agent throughout the series. Her career revolves around her making ethical decisions every day in order to maintain peace in Japan. She upholds a standard of justice and is accountable for every decision she makes, but she is technically no longer a human. Her body and brain are fully prosthetic, with the last thread separating her from machines like the Tachikomas being the quote-unquote ghost inside her mechanical shell. So in respect to the Kantian philosophy established earlier, moral agency should not be limited to organic matter. A moral agent is instead a ghost, or rather, just a mind. And the body is simply that mind's medium to extrapolate reason from sensory data, then manifest ethical decisions into the physical world based on that data.
Is being scrapped the same as dying? Well, since death isn't in our range of possible experiences, I can't really say. As ghostless AIs, we have our limitations. Basically, we're pseudo-immortal. We're not alive, therefore we can't die. That's right. And all sorts of problems are created for us due to the fact that we lack ghosts.
But I disagree. Being scrapped doesn't equal death.
You think so?
The
Come
days
on.
of an exact match and the number of physical bodies and ghosts existing concurrently are over. To take an extreme theoretical example, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that a mass of data with no body could carry a ghost.
Wow, you came up with that? I'm impressed. Why don't you join their conversation?
Nah, I'm more interested in books lately.
Really? What you reading?
Flowers for Algernon.
Wow. You going to the trouble of reading it on paper media?
Well, experiencing exchanges with other cultures is a fundamental of entertainment at any age.
Whoa. Hey, what do you suppose alive is?
That's hard to say. You see, the definition of the word life itself is quite variable.
What do you mean?
By coming into regular and increasing contact with robots, the image humans typically have of life is subconsciously altering. I believe that humans are the ones who are changing.
But what is a mind? Surely the Cartesian theory of a ghost stored in the pineal gland is a ludicrous and outdated concept. But why don't we think about mind-body dualism more modernly from the perspective of computers? A computer can be broken down into very basic elements: processing and memory. The information a computer holds is intangible, yet it is still real. The computer is ultimately just a series of switches and conductive bridges that behave a certain way based on the information given to them. The information does not actually exist in a concrete form within the hard drive, and therefore isn't actually in the computer, but it still manages to influence the world around it. Perhaps then, we can relate mind-body dualism to this concept, and define the mind as a growing collection of information gathered from experiences that interacts with the physical world. For us, that information is stored in our body's hard drive, the brain. And to tie Kant's theory of priori, or intrinsic knowledge, into this metaphor, our brain is simply wired with a base operating system that has fundamental instructions to protect the body and create the base necessities for a mind to be created.
If we just act a little more robotic, we might stand a chance of a major liking us.
So why would something like artificial intelligence not be considered a mind? While they are initially programmed to behave with the world in a certain way, they learn and extrapolate reason through the experiences and sensory data that they receive. In this regard, there is nothing separating the major from the tachikomas she is concerned about. By this same token, when she ultimately decides to deactivate them, she is transgressing the categorical imperative instantiated by Immanuel Kant in his groundwork of the metaphysics of morals. Not only is she robbing them of their autonomous will and removing potential for interaction with the world as moral agents, but she is also making a decision that leads to a contradiction when applied as a universal maxim. She herself is a mind operating a mechanical medium. So by saying the tachikomas should be scrapped for older models with less advanced AI, she is making a decision that would imply she should also be replaced to lessen the potential threats. This is the issue when discussing something inherently utilitarian in nature, juxtaposed with the concepts like moral agency and Kantian philosophy.
Individuality?
Yeah, and do you remember that existence of God thing that I had so much trouble understanding? Well, guess what? I think I'm starting to grasp it now. Here's my theory. Maybe, just maybe, it's a concept that's similar to a zero in mathematics. In other words, it's a symbol that denies the absence of meaning, the meaning that's necessitated by the delineation of one system from another. In analog, that's God. In digital, it's zero. What do you think? What I'm getting at is this. The basis of our design and construction is digital, right? So for the time being, regardless of how much data we accumulate, none of us will ever have a ghost. But for analog-based people like you, Mr. Bato, no matter how many digital components you add on through cyberization or prosthetics, your ghost will never diminish. Plus, because you have a ghost, you can even die. You're so lucky. Tell me, what's it feel like to have a ghost?
That being said, I can't say I would have acted much differently in her position. Her obligation is to uphold peace in Japan and mitigate the risk of things like cyber terrorism. Ultimately, the robots were tools to help do this, and both the Tachikoma's and the Major's obligation was to exact this duty. Also, I think it's important for me to mention that the purpose of this video was to explore the topics brought up in episodes 12 and 15 of the Standalone Complex series using descriptive ethics. My arguments are based solely around the Ghost in the Shell canon, and don't necessarily apply to the real world. Besides, I think the Major made it clear throughout the series how she feels about abstract ethics. The writer of the series did a great job making a character that is grounded in realism, while being directly in the center of these metaphysical gray areas.
What do you think?
I have to admit, for a movie, it wasn't bad. But diversionary entertainment is transitory. It just comes and goes at the viewer's whim. That's the way it should be, but a film with no beginning or end that hooks an audience and won't let go of them is harmful no matter how wonderful you may have believed it was.
Oh, you're a tough critic. Are you saying that we members of the audience have a reality to which we should return?
Yes, I am.
For some who sit and watch the film, misery will be waiting for them the instant they go back to reality. You're willing to accept responsibility for depriving these people of their dreams?
No, I'm not. But dreams are meaningful when you work toward them in the real world. If you merely live within the dreams of other people, it's no different from being dead.
You're a realist.
If a romantic escapes from reality, then yes.
A strong girl you are. If the reality you believe in ever comes about, you give me a call. When it happens, that's the time we'll leave this theater.